Hi guys, Joe here. My next guest is Michael Feeley. Michael is a multiple paranormal UFO experiencer and has personally witnessed dimensional portals opening up before him emanating unorthodox craft, had numerous UFO sightings day and night, and has seen an ET being face to face amongst other personal close encounters of the third and other kind. Michael now uses his 17 years of evidence, gathering knowledge and investigative training to break many ancient codes that have previously remained a mystery throughout the world. To Michael, they are no longer a mystery. Through meticulous research of ancient symbols and codes, the secret metaphorical world of secret brotherhoods has now been deciphered, and the face of history can now be changed, as Michael demonstrates to you a ciphered code left for us to find within the famous monuments of the ancient world. Michael has also dated the Great Pyramid of Egypt by using star codes and can state that the monument is far older than we are being falsely told. In fact, much older. I have to say, one of my most favouriteest interviews that I've done, about 2 hours long. It's really in depth. I really do urge you to listen to the end, because everything of all the people I've been following over these last few years, I asked him questions about the research that they've done, and he had an answer for me. Not to say that they're wrong, but his knowledge is beyond, it's phenomenal. I need to go and lie down after this. It was just absolutely an amazing interview. Like I say, it's long. Please listen. But just before I go, I just want to introduce his books. We've got The Secret Christ, Alchemy of the Gods, and to come, The Lost Word of God. So I hope you enjoy the interview. I certainly did. As I said, one of my favourite to date, and I shall speak to you all soon. I don't think I'm going to do any more videos now, because seriously, after this interview, I don't have anything else to add. Apart from me speaking to the angels when I start to do the Enochian magic. Anyway, folks, thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this interview as much as I did, and I shall speak to you all soon. Bye. Hello, hi guys, Joe here. Got Michael Feeley on. Really excited to have Michael on. Again, another guest who's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really looking forward to deep diving into the journey that Michael's been on. I'm going to do a separate introduction that I'm going to add onto this for Michael, but I just want to promote a couple of books that he's done. We've got The Secret Christ, The Alchemy of the Gods, which sounds really interesting, and I might buy that. I'm in the flow of buying books at the moment, Michael. And The Lost Word of God, which is coming soon, which I believe is, again, going to be a very interesting book. So, Michael, let's start with how you got into what you have gotten into. But first, I just want to touch on that. We've got quite a similar background. We were both in the police, although I was a special constable, so I wasn't a proper copper. But I also didn't have 17 years of witnessing what I saw in the 6 months that I was in, and I believe that's why you left. So if you just want to talk about your history and how you actually, what you saw in the police, including the UFOs, and also what you saw regarding what you didn't like and why you left.
Yeah, of course, I was always open-minded. I always felt that I'd been dropped off on a planet I didn't belong in. You know, at a very, very young age, I used to watch movies such as The Ten Commandments, starring Charlton Heston, asking adult questions about, can this person have parted a sea? And all of these really adult questions in a really infantile mind. My schooling, I didn't really fit in with schooling. I didn't like it. I like the solitude of my own room. When I look back at school reports now that sometimes I get a glimpse of, my teachers, in not so many harsh words, were describing a substandard dunce, really, in relation to me, who would never participate, would never get involved, would never ask, because I didn't want to be there. And it made no sense.
I feel that.
But when you start getting older, and you start, you know, approaching your 4th and 5th year of school, and you start getting careers advisors coming into the school to start speaking to you about what you want to do when you leave. I only wanted to do one thing, which was the police. And when I became a pliable age, which then was 18 and a half. I sent in many applications, but because I hadn't had much life experience at that particular time, I was always told, to come back when you had. It is different now because everybody who has now life experience are the ones that they are recruiting. But actually at the time, they wanted people who had seen something, who had done something, and who had really established themselves. So it took many, many years for me to get in, and I just did various other jobs just to fill in as a gap. And then eventually I got in, and as you know, it was a 30-year career, and it was my intention to be there for 30 years because it was really my first marriage. And to begin with, I absolutely loved it. I adored it. I always wanted to be there. I never took any annual leave. I never had any time off. I would sometimes come off nights and go to court and then come back on. So I never took any time off. I always wanted to be there. And I worked London and I worked Birmingham when I transferred back to my home force. And I was always on response because I always wanted to be there at the time things were happening. And even though many other departments like CID and different things were trying to tempt me to come into their department, I would always resist because I didn't want to be in an office. I wanted to be on the front line. And coming up towards year 17, not only was I being drip fed what you would deem a paranormal supernatural existence, which I'll get to in a moment, but I was also beginning to see things that were really going against my own moral compass. And for argument's sake, I'd be in the crime management office and I would see crimes being manipulated and fabricated, crime figures. And an example of that is, every kind of department has what are known as KPIs, which are key performance indicators. And there are certain crimes that the Home Office measure, particularly forces regarding. And one of those KPIs is vehicle crime.
Sorry, what was that?
Vehicle crime was a KPI.
Yeah.
And that is the example I would use, even though there are, several other KPIs. But the KPIs of vehicle crime was theft of a vehicle and theft from a motor vehicle. So theft of a vehicle is, as it says, someone breaks into your car and they drive off with it. They've stolen it. A theft from motor vehicle is when they enter your vehicle by whatever means and steal something. A sat nav, a phone off the seat, a handbag, whatever that is. That are the two KPIs in relation to vehicle crimes. But what I was seeing is when a crime of that nature would come in, it would be reclassified as vehicle interference, which is not a KPI. So on the one hand, they were lying, saying that crime, vehicle crime figures are plummeting, when in fact, all that had happened is they've been renamed as something else. So vehicle interference had gone up and the KPI vehicle crimes had gone down, but they hadn't. They'd just been put onto a different list. And then I was seeing fabricated response time figures, emergency calls, early response calls. An emergency call really is a 999 call where from the point of calling the police to the time an officer is on your doorstep, you were given 10 minutes. Then there was slightly less, which was known as a early response, which is not an emergency, but you do still need to get there rather quick. But that was 30 minutes. And what I was seeing is if we weren't meeting our emergency response times, they would downgrade it to an early response. So it always looked that we were meeting our response time targets. We were instructed by senior officers to go out and initiate stop and searches on people who were walking dogs and jogging. That was unlawful. And
I experienced that kind of thing, and I feel icky.
But I actually refused to do it. And just for your your viewers and your listeners, a stop and search is when an officer approaches you and asks you to account for your whereabouts. Now that sometimes that may expand into a search if they think that you have something on you that you shouldn't have. But a stop is really, I'm going down a residential street at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and I see a group of youths on the street corner. And I pull up the patrol car and I get out and say, lads, what are you doing at 2 o'clock in the morning in a residential street? Now that is an encounter. It is a lawful encounter because I'm asking them to tell me what they're doing there. But if I go to someone jogging through a park or walking their dog and say, I want you to account for why you're here, well, it's quite obvious. So one of them is lawful and one of them is unlawful. And we were being asked to do unlawful stop and searches to make the figures look good. So all of these things really were I was having none of it. You know, there was forced policies that were trying to dictate to me how I would deal with particular incidents. For argument's sake, of domestic violence, it was my forced policy that for every incident of domestic violence that you went to, someone had to be arrested. And I went to many domestic calls where the neighbour had called up and says, you know, that my neighbours are having an argument. And I'd get there 4 or 5 hours later and they'd be sitting on the sofa, kissing and hugging and watching a movie. Now, my forced policy says that one of them has to be arrested.
Wow.
I refused to do it. I refused. And I was called quite often into the inspector's office saying, you know, you went to this incident on such and such a date. And they would have a printout of the incident log. And they would say, you know, you breached forced policy. Why? And I would say on every occasion, I was at the incident. I dealt with it as I saw fit. And if you're going to send me to these incidents, that's what I will do. And if you don't like how I'm dealing with it, then don't send me. And that was really my response to them. And at one point, bearing in mind that I was the highest arresting officer for my own area for many, many years running, I just turned around and said, from this point, I refuse to arrest anyone. And I actually went on strike within the service. I mean, police can't go on strike, so you have to turn up for work. But I was refusing to arrest anybody, and they really didn't know how to deal with that. At the same time of this real disillusionment and really couldn't stand to be in that environment anymore, I was beginning on a daily basis, both on duty and off duty, beginning to see lots and lots of, as I say, what you would class as paranormal supernatural incidents, which could be, you know, on one night duty, I saw a dimensional portal open up, a wormhole in the sky.
Wow.
And I saw a craft coming out of it. There was incidents where I would see UFOs that were following the police helicopter back to the airport, and the helicopter was refused permission to land because this unexplained object was following it. And there'd be incidents where there'd be explosions underground and people reporting silhouettes in their garden, and a strange eerie atmosphere happening which to my view was some kind of landing. And then standing on the street, and for miles the street lighting just went out in this particular area at the same time. To go home and start discussing it on my computer with a UFO group that I come to know, and as I'm typing, all of my emails are removed from my laptop, seemingly copied and then put back. And from that point on, my phone was tapped, my landline was tapped. There was an incident where I was upstairs asleep and my mobile phone was downstairs. And my dad called at about 7:30 in the morning saying, "Are you okay? You just called me." I'm saying, "Well, how could I? Because I was upstairs asleep and my phone was downstairs." So there was something that was interfering with my communications. And every time certain words were used, you could hear a recording start, or what appeared to be a recording. So there was lots of monitoring, there was lots of disillusionment, there was lots of, literally on a daily basis or a nightly basis, I was seeing or experiencing some kind of thing. So with all of this literally flipping my life 360 degrees, I was no longer the same person as I was. And I certainly couldn't go back to the environment that I was once in. So I left. Now the only emotion was the surprise of having no emotion, because as I say, I was married to that job. And when I went to the exit interview with the chief superintendent, my parting words were, "You decide what it is that I have to do, but I will decide whether or not I do it. Bye." And I just left. And that was really the end of a career where, you know, I'd received many awards, many accolades, many commendations and all different things. So there was no emotion whatsoever. And when I left, I had nothing to leave to. But I could no longer be in that environment. And my decision was actually, I went to the cinema and I was just sitting there watching a movie, and I just said to myself, "Can you go back to this environment?" And I said to myself, "No." I said, "Well, that's the decision made then. I'll go back." So I had nothing to go to, but whatever I ended up doing wasn't as bad as what I was doing.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I was only special, and I was only in it for 6 months, and I was only in it for 6 months because of what I witnessed, the corrupt. I mean, for me, I was flabbergasted when I realised we had to work to targets, and I was like, well, how can you work to targets when you're working with, you can't predict, you can't make crimes up. And so that was one thing. And the bullying that I saw from other police officers with the general public as well. And I was like, this is not what I've joined for. There was one incident where I was in Wigan, and we arrested a group of youths who had started fighting. And I had hold of one of them, and he broke free from me. And two of the other coppers, one of them kicked him down to the floor. Whilst he was on the floor, they were kicking him. Then they picked him up and pushed him up against the wall, scraped all his face. The lad went, right, okay, but, and I just thought, I've not joined for this. That was bullying. He was down on the floor. They didn't need to do any more apart from pick him up and have hold of him. So, but I must admit, I never saw the UFOs. I have had paranormal experiences, but in a very, very different. Mine have been more. I mean, describe UFO, describe the esoteric, I guess, just because you can see a physical flying object, and I saw orbs or things moving in my environment, things appearing in my environment. I have done videos, so for my viewers, I won't go off and bore them. But how did seeing the UFOs, one, how did it make you feel? And two, how did it lead you on to, because when I had my paranormal experiences, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like an air freshener dropping on a pillow that I'd been sat on 2 seconds earlier. And I walked in, thought someone was in the house, realized there wasn't anything. I was like, oh my God, my then boyfriend turned up, and he was sure it wasn't near the sofa. And I was like, what if it was near the sofa? How's it ended up there? And I was really excited with what had happened. And I've had things communicating through my phone. My mum had very similar through her computer when my stepdad passed away. I see those not as aliens as we see as in, depicted as little green men or greys. I see them more as esoteric entities, light beings, whether they're demonic or whether they're angelic, whatever. So with your experiences with the UFOs, I mean, did you see any aliens? Did you see any beings? You did. Wow. So describe those, and how did it make you feel?
Well, of course, it wasn't just UFOs. It was other things as well, like you described. You know, and aliens to me are really advanced humans, but they're just continuing this soul journey in a different vibration, which is often a different star system.
Yeah.
So my first paranormal experience was really a time slip, when consciously I went back to Victorian times to witness a murder. Now, there was a long story to this in terms of the victim of that murder and her assailants, which we didn't realise at the time, was still in our energy field.
What was that? Sorry.
I went back in time consciously to the scene of a murder.
Yeah.
And I witnessed a murder of a 14-year-old girl. And then I came back with the horror and trauma of witnessing that. Now, in terms of, do
you mind me asking how you did that? How did you transport yourself back in time?
Well, it wasn't deliberate, but what had happened was that it was a long story, really, in terms of these earthbound lost spirits have been around myself and family members for quite a while, and they'd asked, or certainly the victim had asked, for a death to be looked into, because she'd always said that it was at the hands of another. What we didn't realise is that we also had an assailant in our energy field as well, which was a stepfather. And it was a long story in terms of looking for the name that she'd given us in the records of recorded deaths. We didn't have certainly didn't have a time period at that time. So I looked all the way back from the present day, which was 2009, to the Second World War, but couldn't find anything of that name. What I didn't realise is actually the year 1850, and I hadn't looked by any means further enough back. So there was this 14-year-old girl that had been murdered by her stepfather, and she'd asked that I look into her death.
And sorry to interrupt, how did that come about? How did that reach your consciousness or your subconscious or your unconscious? What drove you to go, and what spoke to you to go and research his death?
Originally, when I met my wife, which was in the police force, the house that she lived in as a child, we found out was actually built on Victorian farmland where this happened. So this girl had attached herself to my wife originally.
Right.
And through a family medium, this family medium had said to her, there's this girl, this is her name, she wants you to look into her death. Now, when I got together with my wife, then I inherited the story. And I was brought into the story. So I went to the same psychic medium who said the same thing to me many years later, independently of what she said to my wife. So there was lots and lots of strange things going on at the time. That there'd be, 6-foot double glass windows in my house being shattered from
That's
the inside.
happened to me very recently. 2 of my holiday lodges, 45 lodges on the site, both of mine, the glass shattered. One of them, sorry to interrupt, but I think I was being spiritually attacked at the time. One of them, the gardener went past and a stone flicked up. The other one and the guy saw it who lived across who stays across the way. He said he heard this big pop and it had just blown up. So, but do carry on, because
but this double glazed window, there's a central singular impact point, but that was on the inside, and it had basically shattered the inner pane of the double glazed window. And then there would be an attempted possession of my body. Then in the winter we'd stand by the radiator and we'd just go freezing cold, and there'd be a really, really horrible, eerie feeling. So eventually, I had a kind of private dinner with my wife and said, look, we've looked for this girl's name, we can't find anything. How can we, possibly do anything else? And we decided at that point that would be the end of it. And as soon as we decided that would be the end of it, that's when things started to get nasty and things would get negative. And as I say, all of these things would begin to happen, and certainly later on in the story, things that I said privately were repeated back to me. So quite obviously, these spirits were listening to what we were saying. But on Sunday, the 8th of February 2009, kind of approaching maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, again, it was beginning to become very, very eerie, and I was on the phone to this medium saying, when I had this reading with you, you said you would help us and help this girl to move on. But now things have taken a turn for the worst, and we'll take you up on your offer to help us. And she said, okay, well, I haven't got a car, but if you want to pick me up around about 10 o'clock in the morning, then I'll come over and help you. So I said, yes, excellent. And I said, by the way, it's completely calm in the house now. It feels like it's okay again. She says, yes, that's because she's with me, saying you didn't bother to help, or you said you'd help and you haven't. So she'd actually gone through the telephone or whatever to the medium who was speaking to me. So I said, can you tell us, to give us a break? And she said, I'll ask, but that didn't happen. And things became more eerie to such a point that just couldn't stop in the house anymore. So I went to the then mother-in-law's with my wife, and we stopped there overnight. Now, around about, in fact, it was 3:30 a.m. now on Monday the 9th of February 2009, where in a sleep state, in a remote viewing, I went back to the scene. I went back, and I can remember vividly now, a small kind of cottage bedroom, creaky wood. There was a window opposite. The blue blinds were closed. There was a wooden door in the right-hand corner. And at that point, I saw the door open and creak open, as you would in an old creaky cottage, the draft of which made the curtains move. And a young girl's voice says, he's here. And at that point, that's when he used to come in and abuse her. And on this particular date, he put his hand over her mouth to keep her quiet and accidentally killed her and smothered her. And that is really the essence of the story. Now, I actually came back from that completely traumatized, and it took me 6 months to actually get over what I'd witnessed. And I couldn't sleep with the light off for 6 months. Now, bearing in mind that I'd had guns pointed at me, I'd had people chase me with meat cleavers and pull knives and swords on me. This is the only thing that had really scared me, in all honesty, ever. And for 6 months after, it was really difficult to overcome.
And was it
But I called.
and was it the shock of actually being at the scene as well of a scene in the 1850s? You know, how did it feel when you remote viewed? Did your body? I don't fully understand remote viewing. Does your body leave? Sorry, does your soul leave your body?
Your consciousness. Some people can do remote viewing, and it is a targeted remote viewing. For argument's sake, they can lie down and they can, should we say, induce their consciousness, and they can direct it to a specific place, and they can view. For argument's sake, you know, if you knew that Richard Sunak was having a meeting with Vladimir Putin at 10 Downing Street, you could actually direct your consciousness to the specific room, and they couldn't see you, and you could listen in unseen. So it was really a consciousness remote viewing back, and I didn't know it was Victorian times at that time, but I went back and remote viewed, almost like you know, a conscious awareness, seeing what was going on in a different time. And then the next morning, I was just about to get in the car to go and pick the medium up, and she called us and said, "Sorry, I can't help you." And I basically rang back and said, "You are coming to help us because something else has now happened, and you are going to help." So I was kind of, you know, forthright and insistent. So when we got to her house, she was, you know, pacing up and down on the doorstep outside with the door closed behind her, and she was quite irritated, agitated. And we said, "What's the matter?" She said, "Well, I've been a medium for a long time, and this is the first time that I've ever been pretty much so uncomfortable I've had to leave my house." And I said, "Well, that happened to us last night." She said, "This morning, my washing machine had lifted up off the floor and it wasn't even on."
Oh my God.
She said I put a coffee cup on the breakfast bar, and I went to go and drink it, it had to be moved, and it was now in the living room on the windowsill. She said, "You know, I've basically been tormented out of my own house." Now, when she came back to the house, it was all, you know, it was pretty much for the young girl, the victim of it, it was relatively easy for her to deal with that. But the assailant, her stepfather, was a different matter. And it actually, you know, the energy that she had to use in order to send him on his way made her ill for many months after. So it was really a traumatic incident. But if you imagine that your consciousness goes to another place and you can actually see what is going on. But I came back. Now, normally the victim of a murder would have some kind of closure because they would pass away. Whereas I had witnessed the crime and I was still alive, which is really difficult. So there was all of these different things happening. So I started off really as a multiple experiencer, and then I began to understand what it was I was experiencing. And then that moved on to more advanced, you know, like quantum equations and genetic equations being planted into my head. Then that started to become more advanced, where I would see advanced, should we say, extraterrestrial technologies. And then that became more advanced in relation to having information given to me in time slips. Again, I even to this day, I continue to have time slips. I can be sitting on this desk that I'm talking from you now, and I can be writing notes, and all of a sudden I'm in medieval times, or I'm in Egyptian temples, and I have a conscious awareness of being there. And when I'm there, I'm bringing information back, and the information that's coming back is really the answers to many of the secret mysteries. The pyramids, you know, the Stonehenges, all of these different things, which has now advanced to finding out really the meaning of life, the meaning of the universe, what the Big Bang is, how the universe was created, what God is, what. So it's really, there's been a chronological order from originally experiencing these things to now understanding pretty much all there is to understand.
And it sounds like you are someone who's been chosen to give this information to whoever's ready to receive it. Because look, there are loads of YouTubers out there all about. We've got 10 minutes left. Sorry, I had a pop up on my it's asking me to upgrade. And no, Zoom, I'm not going to upgrade. You're not having my money, not this time. Because so when we haven't got a couple of minutes left, we'll log out and then log back in again. So there are plenty of YouTubers out there all professing certain histories, and I've really struggled with the different histories, the different chronologies, the different perspectives on our history, where we came from. You know, you've got Zachariah Sitchin saying, you know, we were geoengineered by Anunnakis, and you've got someone else that's saying something different. From your perspective, with you being a receiver, obviously, if you've been a receiver, you're being given this information. It's being downloaded into you, for want of a better phrase. So from what I've just said there, with the different histories that people have researched and they've got very solid evidence of, what's your perspective? Do you think there are different timelines running simultaneously? Yeah, because that was the conclusion I came to. That's the only thing I could conclude, that there are different timelines simultaneously running. It's, you know, and that's why we've all got different perspectives.
You see, a lot of people's perspective is really a sensory appearance of truth. And
let me hold that. Sensory appearance of truth. I like that.
So, which is basically, we have these five senses. And most people are really encased within a five sense awareness. And what I mean by that is there are universal waves, and the senses will pick up on those waves and they will pass that information to the brain. Now, the brain, or certainly the physical aspect of the brain, which is in the dimensional universe, not the dimensionless, will take that information and, based largely on memory, it will then create what you believe to be reality, when in fact it's not reality.
And memories are what I can never say the word, the Icke records? Is that where we are?
We are part of that database, but really our individual identity is memory and a national identity is history. So people just see what the brain tells them to see. And often the way in which their brain is wired is really a limit of their intelligence and a limit of their consciousness levels. So unless they rewire the brain, then they will not see or hear or come into contact with the things that are not within that encasement of the five sense reality. So you have to look beyond the five sense reality to regain connection to the database of the information that is.
So can I just ask, as regards, like when I had my experiences, I wasn't on any kind of, or I certainly don't remember being on any kind of spiritual journey, but obviously I tapped into something. Now, Jung would say that whatever moved was part of me. So essentially, Jung would say that I moved those objects. I'm having a hard time believing that, because when you move something, surely it's to do with intent. But I wasn't on any kind of spiritual journey at the time, and I certainly wasn't conscious. So obviously we have people that have experiences, and as you've just stated there, and I am paraphrasing because I'm sure you've worded it differently, you have to be on a certain resonance to experience, for your brain to perceive the paranormal. So even someone who's not on a spiritual journey can still be on that resonance that other people aren't on. Could you expand on, help me understand that?
What people need to realize is that the paranormal is normal and the supernatural is natural. It is not this phenomena that is unreachable. If you imagine that there are so many existences living around us at any particular time, but it is like radio waves, you know, that there's so many radio waves that come through you and your home every second of the day. But unless you have a radio and you tune into a particular frequency, you will have no knowledge of it being there. And as soon as you tune in, then you can be able to hear it and see it and interact with these things, the same with TVs. So these simultaneous existences are the same. If you align yourself to their particular frequency, then you'll be able to interact with them, or you'll be able to see them. Now, because we are, as I say, largely five sense 3D based, we don't tend to see anything that's beyond that. But when you start looking at, you know, biblically in the beginning was the word is sound. But in order to speak sound, you think about it first. So everything is within the mind of the universal consciousness. And the material realm in which we exist is a dream state of the universal mind, the universal thought.
Yeah.
So when we go to bed at night and we dream, our thoughts are creating what we believe to be material existence. In the same way as this material existence is the dream state of the universal thought process.
Yeah.
So there's all different levels of a dream with different vibrations, with different mathematical patterns. Now, when a lot of people talk about God being a singularity is a point of light that contains dynamic frequency, which then reflects mathematical pattern. So there's only one language of the universe, which is numbers and is mathematics. So everything in existence is a mathematical sequence. And each of the dimensions, each of the timelines are the same. They are frequency based. And if you align yourself to them, then you will be there. It's like, you imagine, the central train station. It has hundreds of trains and hundreds of tracks going in different directions, but it all goes through the central station. And that's what we do. God didn't create the universe creates God. Now, God is really the maximum that the universe can be. That is God. Now, when we become the maximum that we can be, that is godlike, or as the Egyptians called it, the Godhead. Because we are, when we think with logic and with reason, we are heading towards the God state. Because most people do not think with logic and with reason. Even some of the most intelligent people on the planet have no logic and they have no reason. And unless you have logic and reason, you will never understand the universe, because it's a logical, reasonable thing. Now, science, because it only believes that there is a material existence, it will not get much further until it acknowledges that there's also a simultaneous coexistence, a universe of thought and light. Now, it is the thought that created the Big Bang by an epiphany.
I've always struggled with the Big Bang. How can you create something from nothing? But what you're saying, it wasn't created from nothing, it was created from a thought, which everything is created from thought.
Yes.
Wow, you've really just simplified something for me there.
Before we do anything, there's a pen next to me. Now, before I pick that pen up, I think, oh, well, I'm going to pick that pen up.
Yeah.
Before I create the material universe in my dream, I think about it.
Yeah.
And when I think about it, there's this explosion of thought. This electrical impulse, whatever it is, but there is no such thing as nothing. So something has to come from something that already exists.
I'm going to stop there, Michael, because we've got 1 minute 41. I'm going to stop it. I do want to go further onto this because I'm finding it fascinating. All this quantum stuff. I'm not going to use mind blowing, because you said on Ant's podcast, if somebody's mind blown, it means that you've really helping me to understand the physics of or the quantum reality that we exist in, something that I have struggled with. So I'm going to stop it there. Just bear with me a sec. And welcome back to this fabulous conversation. Michael's really helping me understand quantum physics here. So yeah, let's continue from where we left off.
Yes, so basically there is two universes in one. And that is the dimensionless universe, which is light and thought, and the dimensional universe, that is the material universe that we supposedly exist in, even though nothing is really solid.
Do you think there are multiple realms in those dimensions?
Yes, because there's multiple train tracks, there's multiple frequencies, there's multiple vibrations, there's multiple existences. So when this consciousness had a thought that it needed to understand itself, because no one can explain self merely by the fact of existence.
Where did consciousness come from?
Consciousness has always been there. It's always been an awareness. It's been this dimensionless universe of light and thought. But in order to become the absolute self, you have to experience all that there is to experience. Otherwise, you can never be the complete article. Religion tells you that God is perfect, but God has never experienced what it is to die. So therefore, how can it be perfect? Because there is an element of experience that is not experienced.
And that's from the Buddhist philosophy, that, isn't it? The Buddhists say that God isn't perfect, because if God was perfect, he wouldn't. I can't remember how they phrase it, but yeah, God isn't God can't be perfect if he wants to experience everything.
No, but going on further than that, God has not yet been created, because the universe has not yet met its maximum optimum potential. And
wow,
it can only,
I've never thought of it like that before.
so God is not in existence yet. But when the universe has become absolute, then that's God. So the universe is using the multiple fragments that it has created, which includes ourselves, to optimize itself through individual experience.
And do you think, I don't know if you've been down this road, and I know you said that we already are in the age of Aquarius, and there's a lot of pundits out there saying that if we're going to call this a simulation, for want of a better word, that it's coming to the end of the simulation. Is that when, in your opinion, is that when God will finally have been created, because this simulation that he's created to experience then ends?
Once the universe has experienced everything it possibly can experience, and it now knows what it is, if you imagine that you are a self-consciousness, but how can you know what you are, who you are, what you are not, unless you have a mirror, which is another self-consciousness that has an awareness to look back upon yourself and say, this is what I am, this is what I'm not. So the idea of this all omnipresent God of perfection, of eternity, is a fallacy. So the universe has to use all of its parts in which to become absolute, and only then does God get created.
And
now, because
sorry to interrupt, but whilst the questions come to me, is that, and apologies if this is a really simplistic question, but is that where twin flames come from? To have your, if you believe in twin flames, I don't know what your thoughts are on that element of all that is to complete. So, oh my God, this is going into a really deep conversation. What you were saying about God has to experience every element of himself in order to be complete. Some will say that we have twin flames, which completes us as spirits, but then spirit is God. Well, you're going to have to simplify that bit for me.
Everything in so-called existence has to have an opposite counterpart.
Yeah.
Which lives in simultaneous existence. So when you look at the New Age spiritual yin and yang symbol, and they turn around and say it is duality, no, it's actually not. It's the time before duality, before the split. So when unity becomes separation, it becomes an individual experience. Now, the only way that you can have an individual experience is with the introduction of an invisible force called time. So we live in a time-space existence, because without time, we could not have this individual experience. So everything has to have an opposite counterpart. If I was to say to you, how do you feel today physically in yourself? And you turn around and say, I feel absolutely wonderful. I feel really well. How can you possibly make that statement unless you've experienced the opposite?
Yeah.
Because you would have nothing as a comparable. So duality gives us a comparable. Duality tells me that when I was in the police, I was at this level, and now I'm not. I'm at this level. But there is a comparable through opposites.
Yeah.
So existence, and when you look into the Hegelian dialect, which again is Friedrich Hegel, who was a philosophical person, he basically said that the human mind could only exist through duality. We can only understand things through duality, because that is a comparable. So-called black, so-called white, so-called love, so-called hate, so-called positive, so-called negative are the same aspects of the same scale, but it's a different vibration of that scale. Yeah. Now, the idea, and this is where a lot of the New Age people have this wrong, because I've been doing talks there, and they turn around to me and say, you shouldn't concentrate on the dark, just the light.
Oh, yes, that really annoys me. Yeah.
That's creating a complete imbalance within themselves. The idea is to unify these both aspects to a middle point. a point of balance,
Yeah.
and duality, a point of equilibrium and neutrality.
Yeah.
Because when you balance the two of them, then you become the yin and yang symbol, you know, the time before separation.
Yeah.
They will never achieve their so-called fifth dimensional enlightenment and ascension when the scales are tipped like that.
And that's all been by design, hasn't it? It's all been by design. Yeah.
That is exactly what religion does, because he puts the male up there and he puts a female down there. Yeah. So it's creating that imbalance. You know, you have to look at the scales of Libra. They have to be balanced, because without balance, you can't move forward.
Yeah.
So you have to have this duality, you have to have this polarity to give you some kind of, should we say, idea of where you were and where you are now. So when you talked about your mind is not your own, well, everything is a universal mind. And all the thoughts that we have and the world of thoughts that sometimes we believe to be our thoughts come from the central singularity of light with a mathematical pattern. So technically, they are our individual thoughts, but they're also part of a larger thought pool.
And we've been given,
you know, the same as our dreams are our dreams, but they're part of a larger dream pool. Now, if you imagine that when we dream, as I say, we can create a world, we can create a reality that we believe to be material and real at the time. So can you imagine if we all dreamt together the same thing, the same utopia, the same common goal, then we would create it. Because as the Bible says, the word becomes flesh. So what you think, because thoughts are living, they are living consciousness, then you will create. You know,
and that's why there's been this hijacking of the mind to control the collective unconscious.
Yeah.
But just going on that, so I told you about a podcaster, and I really like his work. I've had an astrological reading from this guy, and he believes that our realities are scripted, and I'm actually living my astrological chart as we speak. So I do believe that our lives are scripted. I believe that I liken it to Bandersnatch. We've got a script. We come into this realm with a scripted reality, but we make certain choices, and that could send us on certain variations of that scripted reality, but it leads us back to the same point. That's how I liken free will, if you like. There are some people that are on their dead fast scripted reality because they haven't got, I don't know, have they got, again, I blow my own mind sometimes with the questions that I have that I don't seem to have an answer for. But regards to the technology that has been introduced into the collective, do you think that can interfere with a person's individual mind and stop them from critically thinking? So as an example, you remote viewed, right, to go and witness this crime that you witnessed. In my opinion, you were allowed to do that from whatever other entities are in this realm, because we know that the CIA use very, very gifted people to remote view. I've never remote viewed. Could I learn how to do it? I absolutely have no idea. So I guess what I'm getting at, Michael, is with the entities that exist, we know that there'll be malevolent as well as benevolent out there. From my research, from what I've understood, there are two forces that are fighting for the freedom of humanity right now, and I'd really like your opinion on that with the research that you've done. So and with the transhuman agenda, and again, I don't know if you've looked into that, and again, I'd like your opinion on that with the research that you've done. There is this overtaking of humanity as a collective to turn us into cyborgs, to completely control the mind. As Yuval Harari said, humans no longer have free will, and he then extended it to spirit and soul no longer has free will. So I ache that. So they are trying to trap us in this realm. So the point of my musings and explaining where I'm going with this is if all our minds are coming from one big source, and we've each got individual minds that we work off, I'm sorry, I'm confusing myself here. So
I know where you're going.
you know what you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So can our thoughts can be hijacked? So why are there some of us that apparently have free will and haven't been hijacked and haven't been filled with certain events? There, I got to the point. If you watched any of my videos, you'll see that I do verbal diarrhea. It's just part of who I am.
To answer that question, I'll draw upon one of the greatest arguments of psychology. Now, the greatest argument of psychology, or the field of psychology, is determinism and free will, and they've never agreed as to what that is. Now, in answer to that question, if you have a weak mind, there will be determinism. Your life will be determined by others. If you have a strong mind, you will determine your own life. So, in terms of why do some people have free will? Because they have strong, determined minds. And they are basically saying, this is where I'm going, this is where my focus is, and you ain't going to stop me. That's free will. Those who are hover directed, where they have to try and fit in because they don't want to be left behind, or they must wear the best trainers because they're scared about what people will think. Well, then they are the other directed. They are suffering the determinism where other people determine their life.
So now, if this is in a scripted reality, we've all got our own blueprints with our zodiacs. Those that have got the weak mind, for want of a better phrase, it's not a nice phrase to use, but is it called determinism?
Determinism and free will.
Yeah. So those that are governed by determinism, are they being sent off their blueprint of astrology, or
they're allowing themselves to be sent off their blueprint because they are basically swimming upon the waves that are given to them.
I love the way you word things.
So if you turn around and say, I'm not going on that wave, I'm going on my own wave, then you are within the confines of your blueprint, your script. But if you allow yourself and your mind to be drifted off by the diversions of others, other things that you're focusing on, by a society that just gives you what you don't need, and you are happy with what you don't need because you think you need it, that is taking you off your plan, your script.
And that really ties in with Bandersnatch, because some people do come back onto their wave.
Yes, but that comes from their own mind, their own free will, their own determined. Well, now actually, I can feel that I'm going adrift here. I'm coming back. But for the vast majority, they just sail on the waves that they're given.
Yeah.
Now, that's where determinism comes in, because the sea, the ship, the waves, the direction is determined for them by outside of themselves. Those with a strong mind direct themselves to where they want to go.
Beautiful.
And that is free will.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of now bringing that round to AI, I have a different viewpoint on what AI is. There's a thing in the universe called the law of evolution. Now, going back to what I said about the universe must continue to grow and must continue to expand. That's its own evolution. And it must expand to the point that it creates God, which is its maximum that it can be. Now, the only thing that is greater than the maximum, that is greater than God, is a community of gods. So when we all expand ourselves to become godlike, then we are a community of gods, which then enhances the universe. But there is something called the law of evolution, which states that simpler life forms will be replaced by more complex ones. Because at the moment, the way in which humanity is behaving, it is holding everything back. Yeah. You can't fully grow to your maximum potential if there's aspects of you that are holding you back. In the same way as you can't walk through the street if someone's stepping on the bottom of your coat. So the law of evolution says that those who are preventing it, the simpler forms who are acting the way in which they are acting, at some point will be replaced. Now, my view is AI is potentially that replacement.
Wow.
So people now really need to start getting with the script. They really need to start waking up and thinking the way in which we are behaving, the way in which we are treating ourselves, which is really, when someone suffers, we're all suffering because we
Yeah.
are all the same thing. But until humanity matures enough mentally and spiritually to understand that we're all the same thing, we will continue to hold everything back. And if we continue to hold everything back, we will be replaced. And that to me is the drift towards AI, which will be a more complex human.
Yeah. Makes absolute perfect sense. Now I listened to your interview with Ant again this morning just to get a recap on, you know, the work that you've done, etc. And you talked about a split in timelines and how those of us that are evolving consciously will be on a completely different timeline. I've heard of something called the Chris code. I haven't looked into it, and that is talking about, we basically leave the Fibonacci code and we go to the Chris code. What are your thoughts on that? One of my friends is completely, you know, she doesn't believe in the Chris code because it's like the Fibonacci code is Earth, is nature, but some call it the deity of death. How do you see this split of timelines?
Again, where the problem lies is the idea that there is only one code, which is a material code. And that is what I was saying about modern day science. This is really the crumbs of ancient knowledge, because they are just looking at it as a material matter, atoms, particle existence. But that's just one part. There's also that simultaneous existence that is not that. And what they're looking at is really a result of something that created it, that already exists. So the Big Bang wasn't the beginning. The Big Bang was the epiphany of a thought to create what we believe to be a material realm, but from something that already exists. So if you fall into the trap of saying there's the Fibonacci code because that's nature, well, yes, it is, but there's also other codes, and there's universes, and there's other timelines, and there's other dimensions that are not part of the Fibonacci code. When you look at the mathematical behavior of the third dimension, that manifests as the laws of physics. When you look at the mathematical behavior of the dimensionless world of light, that manifests as a thought. But a thought is not physical. So we have to get out of this modern day scientific trap that everything is a material world.
Real. And that's why they want us, isn't it? In the material.
Yes, because if you're thinking, well, only the Fibonacci sequence exists as a code of nature, but there's different levels of nature, and they all have a different code, and they all have their own laws of physics based on the mathematical behavior of that particular frequency or that particular timeline. So you have to get out of the trap of just thinking it in a one-dimensional way, that everything's material, which is what your science is telling you.
I mean, she certainly doesn't think in one-dimensional like that, but I think you've helped. I mean, I may very well have misinterpreted what she said to me, but that's what I got from her regarding. So how do you work out the mathematical codes from things that you can't see, that aren't physical?
What you have is the outer is a projection of the inner. So in other words, you have a projector and you have the projection.
Yeah.
So inner is the projector and the outer is the projection.
Yeah.
You can't have one without the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right, the right brain is the path to the soul. The soul is light.
Yeah.
So it comes in terms of that singularity, that universal singularity, the central core of the mind, which is light, which has a mathematical pattern. So science is really looking and examining at the outer, but without acknowledging that there's an inner that is causing the outer.
Yeah.
You first of all have to make the acknowledgement that it all exists in the same place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you have a dimensionless universe of thought and it expands, that becomes the dimensional universe that we live in. Now, if the dimensional universe contracts, it becomes dimensionless. Now you have, which is a mathematical transform and a mathematical inverse, which is basically this. Now there's one thing that every galaxy has that is essential for this transfer, and that is called a black hole. So now you know what a black hole really is. It is the facilitator of the transfer between the dimensionless and the dimensional and the dimensionless.
And are we in the dimensionless or the dimension?
We're in both, because the physical body is in the dimensional, the physical eyes see the dimensional, but the mind and the third eye is in the dimensionless, where the truth.
Which brings me on to my next question, but carry on what you were saying.
So we are basically living in two worlds. Now, when you get to the entrance of the Great Pyramid, you will see a double chevron. The double chevron is called Shibua. Shibua means where the two worlds meet, which is us, because we are in both the dimensionless and the dimension.
I'm writing a book on this at the moment, you know, just believe it or not. I've only just started, but it's a long these themes, spirit and matter meeting in the middle, and so when these timelines split, obviously you have your digital people who have, you know, what will happen to those of us who, I don't like using third, fourth, and fifth dimension because it's very new age. The new age has hijacked everything, hasn't it? So there is certain terminology that I've become really begrudging to use, and of course it just doesn't stop at fifth dimension, does it? And I don't know if you've listened to any of Tom Montauk's stuff. I mentioned him in our emails. He talks about the fourth dimension being aliens, the fourth dimension I think is your demons and spirits and whatnot. Your fifth dimension are your aliens. Obviously you're not agreeing with that with your face. And there are something like 12 dimensions, but when this timeline splits, what happens to our physical selves? Do we pass and go on to the whatever dimension we're destined to go to? Do we go back to spirit? What's your opinions on that?
In terms of dimension, as I said, it's a different frequency, it's a different vibration to the one before it, or you know, the one above it. In terms of, yes, all of those things are in those dimensions, but it is not purely those things that occupy those dimensions. If I turn around to you and say, Joe, I want to meet you at Wigan Town Hall on Saturday the 28th of November at 4 p.m. Well, that is a fourth dimensional coordinate. So we already exist in the fourth dimension. As I've just said, our body is where spirit and matter meet, where the two worlds meet. So we're already in the fifth dimension, because the fifth dimension is the dimensionless universe of which we also occupy. So we're occupying at least dimensions 1 to 5. So you have the new age that say, oh, we want to get to the fifth dimension. You're already in the fifth dimension. And yes, there are already existences in those dimensions. So yes, you do get aliens in the fourth, you do get aliens in the fifth, you do get negatives and positives in both of them.
Which we can tap into from, because we're already there. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I can consciously take myself to the void, to the place before thought. I can consciously do that at any moment that I want to, where it is complete silence. We can all go to different dimensions by aligning ourselves to the particular frequency of that dimension. So we don't have to go anywhere to be anywhere. As I said, there's one language of this universe, which is mathematics. So therefore, every aspect of the universe can communicate with itself. That is why a lot of extraterrestrials are communicating through mathematics, and why a lot of the philosophers of the ancient past were mathematicians, because that is the language of the universe. But we don't have to go anywhere to be anywhere. We can get there from anywhere by aligning ourselves to its frequency. Now you have these existences that require a physical craft of sort to get to places, and you have beings that don't. You know, when you look at the dimensional and the dimensionless universe, light beings of light, of which the soul is, can travel between the different dimensions, the different universes. But there is a border between the two. And that border between the two is called Horus, which gives us the such words as horoscope. It is the scope of Horus. Now, in Egyptian gods, that would be Horus. So you have this divide, but light beings can travel in between the two, whereas physical beings stick to the material realm. But we're already in these dimensions anyway. And yes, you do get aliens in the different dimensions. Of course you do. But the fourth dimension is not solely for this, and the fifth dimension is not solely for that.
And they equally travel into this dimension. They come into this dimension, as do demons and, you know.
Yes, they do.
But they can travel, why, like, rightly so, why can't? And we do. I mean, I had a mushroom ceremony a few weeks ago, and I travelled. Some might be sceptical about that, but I travelled. I know I did.
Yes, because you went into the dimensionless universe.
Yeah.
And the dimensionless universe is the place of truth. It is the place beyond the 5 sense reality. It is the place of thought and light. Now, when the Bible turns around and says to Adam, you know, from dust you came and to dust you shall return, people think it is, you know, sand and soil. But when you look at ancient Hebrew, dust comes from the word abak, which means particles of light. So what it is really saying is, from particles of light you came, to particles of light you shall return. Now, when you talk about where do people go with different time slips, they could remain where they are, but they'll have no knowledge of those who are in a different time. In the same way that I will absolutely guarantee now, because for one, I can feel them here, and sometimes I see them here, there is existences all around me now. They're all around you now. Sometimes you catch a glimpse of them, sometimes you don't.
Yeah.
But they are, and they are there in a different place between worlds, the space between worlds, which is where, when we pass physically, that's where we go. We go to the place between worlds to continue with the journey, with the dream. And once you realize that it's a dream and illusion, then you start to advance yourself.
So do you think that ghosts are, see, again, I've got my own view based on the things that I've looked at regarding the different realms, and when we pass, our soul goes somewhere, and again, I'd like your opinion on the soul trap, the school, what your opinions are on that, because I'm just visualizing now when we pass our souls. We've got another 10 minutes, just bear with me a second. The goal of our journey, if you like, this again, I'd like your opinion on this. The goal of our spirit's journey, spirit comes down to soul, soul comes down into matter. Our main goal is to get back to source, to get back to spirit, to get back to God. But of course, you're saying that God hasn't yet been created. So that brings me on to an even bigger question. And I think I've already asked this. If God has to be, this is really big for my brain to take right now, based on where I thought I am in my evolution. So basically, this simulation has to end in my viewpoint. And again, I think you've already talked about this, so I'm probably just repeating myself, and you're going to correct me again. This simulation has to end in order for God to be completed, because all the souls have to go back to spirit in order for. And I'm thinking of God being, of spirit being the oneness here. And again, is spirit the oneness? Again, another huge question.
Spirit is the breath of the oneness. So when you look at what does the word Jesus mean, it means divine breath, or the circulation of divine breath. When you look at the biblical God Yahweh in his tetragrammaton form, YHWH, YH means inhale, WH means to exhale. So give, you shall receive. You are breathing. So when you expire, you stop breathing. But spiritualism is really the art of breathing. So the breath of God, the Holy Spirit, is really what keeps us alive in this realm. So ghosts, some ghosts are not ghosts. Sometimes we in what is known as a pseudo appearance will drift into parallels, and we will be seen by them as ghosts, but we don't even know that we've drifted into their reality. and we come back to our reality with no awareness of being there. So sometimes we are seen as ghosts in other places in a pseudo appearance, in the same way as they are seen as ghosts when they're not. They've come from another parallel into ours, and we see them as ghosts. So, of course, there are, you know, lost spirits that are in the wrong place, in between places, that for whatever reason have refused to go to where they should be gravitating back. And they are called earthbound spirits because they're not where they should be. You know, their natural progression to go back to the correct space between worlds in order to renew, in order to review, in order to take stock of what has happened and what they want to do next. So again, there's so many different realities, so many existences, so many things that are alive and conscious. Everything has an awareness. Now, when you look at science and it says that every time they observe something, that something knows that it's being observed. Now, the scientific world put it down to the fact that when we look at something or we point apparatus at something, photons are being bounced off whatever we are observing. So with that in mind,
we're projecting energy, aren't we, into that area?
We are, but with that in mind, no scientific experiment can ever be accurate because they're always changing the behavior of what they're observing by watching it. But there is a different viewpoint, certainly of me and many of the mystics, that because everything has mind and everything comes from one singular mind, the cosmic core, because it has mind, it has awareness. And because it has awareness, it knows that it's being watched. If you go out into the garden this afternoon and you start singing your heart out and you start dancing around the clothes pegs and the prop, and you think that there's no one there, and you're really, you know, just expressing yourself and singing Dolly Parton or whatever, but then you look up and you see that your neighbour's looking through the window at you, straight away you'll stop. So being observed has changed your behaviour. You are aware that you're being observed because you have mind. So all of these atoms and all of these so-called particles are mind that has an awareness, and it realizes it's being watched because it has an awareness of being watched.
So basically everything in my front room right now could be having a party when I'm in bed, and then get back to where it's meant to be when I'm going up in the morning because it's being watched.
There's an awareness. You know, people sometimes, if I were to say this, people would sometimes laugh. But when I was a child and I used to look at my teddies on the shelf and different things, I always knew, although I didn't know how I knew, that they had an awareness of me. I knew. I could feel it. I knew that they had an awareness that I was there. And I knew that they were listening to what I was saying. Now, looking back on it, all of those things are atoms and particles that have mind, that have an awareness.
Well,
so, of course,
children, we know that. That's why we talk to teddies, and that's why we talk to dolls, and that's why we play. We know. Yeah, never thought of it like
that. We haven't been distorted or corrupted yet.
Yeah.
You know, so we know things that, how do we know? Well, we just know. Because we haven't been corrupted by the world yet.
Yeah.
And told that we're stupid and told that it's an imaginary friend. It's not. You know, you have to realize that that's a pen. But so's that. And so's that. But science in the modern world is telling you that that's all there is. There's only one pen. But there isn't. You know, and that's just, you know, a very simple analogy, that there are multiple things that they're not even recognizing, so they can never understand the inner when they're only accepting that there's an outer. But you can't have an outer without an inner. You have to look at both things. And that is where they're basically, you know, deliberately or otherwise, they're failing us. Even Einstein's E equals mc squared is only half of the equation of mass, which is the dynamic equation of mass, not the static equation of mass. Had you bought both static and dynamic, we would have had E equals m, which is energy equals mass, which then takes you into vortex mathematics, which then takes you into spheres of rotation, which then gives you sound waves, which then gives you the word, which then gives you the creation. So even mainstream science, you know, the person who's seen as the greatest ever scientist only ever gave you 50% of the equation, which is now 100% basis of physics.
I didn't expect to be getting into the realms of this conversation today. It's fabulous. You've got a fantastic mind to be coming up with all of this. And yeah, it's just and what led you down? I know you were having these downloads. It's an inner knowing, I guess, isn't it? It's an inner knowing. That's where it's led you to. I don't know.
It's really a realization that this is the path you're on. You know, some people come here again who are wired differently to most people, because it's your turn to be wired differently to most people, and there's something that is pre-activated in you that when you get here, you just know that you're here for a greater purpose.
I'm going to stop there. I'm going to stop there. We've got 1.5 minutes left. Do you want to come back in? I do.
Okay.
Yeah, because I want to ask you about going back to some people are wired differently. That's their time to be wired like that. And I then want to go on to where do we go from here? Yeah.
See
so,
a couple of minutes.
Yeah, speak to you in a minute, Michael. Welcome back, guys, to this mind-blowing interview with Michael. As I've just said to Michael off air there, he's really it's hurting my brain because I'm not great at understanding quantum physics at the best of time. But it's hurting my brain in a good way, and he's really opened my perception and viewpoint to give me another angle to this reality, if you like. So going back to what we said at the end of the last recording about brains being wired differently, and this is your time. So if we think about the Buddhist 7 cycles, or many religions, these 7 cycles of this lifetime to reach nirvana. Of course, we come here with a memory wipe, as David Icke would say, and many others would say, and I believe we get to a certain age when we start tapping into those memories. Otherwise, that's why there are some of us that have got an awareness of this reality and others that haven't. So those that come back with a mind that's wired to different people, do you think they are at their end of their soul journey, if indeed there is the end of a soul journey? What's your view as well? I'm going to, because I asked everybody this question because it's one that I've done videos on it myself. Is it a trap or is it a school? You know, what are your opinions on both of those points?
When you get to nirvana, you realize that is also an illusion. So you spend sometimes many existences, you know, waiting. You become what is known as the ignavi, and many religious peoples of all religions of the mainstream ilk, they just wait and wait and wait and wait for this, you know, saviors on white horses and different things. When you realize, when you look into mysticism and Gnosticism, you realize that you are your own salvation.
Yeah.
So you are working towards nirvana in certain religions, but nirvana is also illusion. It is the maya. It is the maya, which means illusion. People have asked me, is it a trap? Well, it depends on how you define a trap. I think there's multiple illusions that you have to work your way through and filter out and sift through. And you can only do that when you reach a certain level of awareness yourself. The level of awareness that you need to reach is one that makes you realize that it's an illusion. Because when you realize it's an illusion, you've reached the level of awareness that enables you to see that it's an illusion. And if you see that it's an illusion, it's not a trap. If people are walking around in the best possible prison, which is the prison of the mind that they carry around with them.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that prison is they don't even realize that it's a prison, so they will never seek to escape it, because they don't know. You know, if you are in a physical Alcatraz, then you can see the walls, you can see the bars, you can see the guards. You realize that you are in some form of entrapment. But when you carry that around in your mind, because it is really encroached in a 5th sense reality, it is encroached in a in a system that wants to close you down rather than allow you to expand, then I guess that is a form of a trap. But when you start taking the responsibility for yourself and your own development, and you get that free will, that determined mind, the moment that you begin to realize that what we've been told is not true.
Yeah.
And again, going back to the century, the century illusion of truth, really. And many people who think that they have the truth, they are in a different bubble of illusion. So all of these nirvanas, all of these things are really part of the illusion.
Yeah.
And you are trapped by virtue of the fact that you don't understand that. The moment you do, there is no trap.
And again, you know, I've been questioning. I mean, I've always questioned religion from the day I've questioned governments. I've questioned religion. I've never been a religious person, but on this journey, I've opened my perception to the teachings of the Bible. I've not read the Bible, but I've come to realize that there are allegories in the Bible which are trying to show us to reach. But I've always been of the understanding that religion, including Buddhism, is a trap, because if we are of the knowledge that we have to live 7 cycles to reach nirvana, and we keep getting reincarnated, then we're actually making our own trap for ourselves, because we're then saying to ourselves, when we pass, we no longer have the free will to leave this realm, because we think that we've got to come back and live our 7 lives. So religion, so religion then teaches people that we have karma, in that we have to come back and correct in this life, and that's where religion becomes a trap.
Well, yes, because again, you have sin. You know, if you have the Western Christianity, you have sin, which is not what you believe it to be. You know, they tell you that you must fear God. Well, for one, God doesn't exist yet. But when you look at the word fear, again in ancient Hebrew, it means to understand. So what it is saying is you must fear the Lord and must fear God. It's not saying you should be scared of them. It means you should understand and know what they are.
Yeah.
So religion is part of the trap. And when you are living because you don't want to sin, and you think that these saviors are coming to save you, you are literally just waiting lifetime after lifetime after lifetime for something that's not going to happen.
And because you get your physical life with that gnosis, you go into your soul life and you reach wherever, whether you reach that being that says you then have to come back. If you've believed that in your physical life, you're going to believe it when you die, and you then could. So we're actually creating our own reincarnation with our belief system in this realm. I've never thought of it like that before.
But we're also creating, if there is a trap, then we are the ones creating it by the fact that we're not yet at that awareness and that level that we understand that it's a trap. And we don't understand that to reach the universal mind, which is really what the Bible calls our Father in heaven, they have put a canopy between you and it. And they're saying that you can't interpret scripture yourself, you must come through us. You can't reach God yourself, you have to come through us. You can't get into the kingdom of heaven. You know, it also tells me in the Bible that flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God. Well, that's Jehovah's Witness screwed then, isn't it? Because they tell me that after Armageddon, they're going to be on planet Earth as flesh and blood in the kingdom of God. If Christ is this perfect Son of God, then why did he need to be baptized to be washed of sin?
Yeah.
If Jesus is never described anywhere in the Bible, and he isn't, then where does this appearance of Christ come from? If we are told we must not worship graven images, then why is it when I walk in a church it's full of graven images?
And these are things that people never question, and that's why they're on that wave of being taken, because they never question anything.
Somebody else's wave.
Yes. Yeah.
Determinism. And that really has always, certainly as far as I can see it, has always been humanity's affliction, that we are allowing other people to tell us rather than feeling and experiencing the answer for ourselves.
Absolutely. And from a collective unconscious point of view, where does that leave those of us who are... So I used to follow a guy called Mark Passio. I don't know if you've ever come across him. but he teaches a lot on natural law, and he's talking a lot about the agendas that are rolling out. And he says, I'm fine, I'm living by natural law. It's you lot that are bringing me down and building my prison that I don't want because of the collective consciousness. So what's your viewpoint? And it's just popped into my head, this question. What's your viewpoint on that? Those of us that are on the journey that we're on, we know that the reason why we are pummeled with brainwashing propaganda is to control and manipulate the collective consciousness to create their reality. So those of us that don't want that reality, that are going in a different direction, and those of us who've got free will, where does that leave us who've got free will? Are we going to get swept away on that wave, or is that where...
Not if the free will's strong enough. In terms of what the gentleman says about, I live by natural law and you lot are bringing me down. Isn't that what the universe is saying? I want to evolve, but you lot are bringing me down.
Yeah.
It's a micro macro, isn't it? So again, when you have, we all live within a certain system. And as I said previously in this interview, if we were all to have a common thought, if we all were to have a common dream, then we would have what is known as a castellia, which is basically a future utopia. But because we are given what we believe to be reality, which is really somebody else's thought process, which is somebody else's agenda, in which the collective mind, the hive mind, to follow as a true reality. That's because the people who are following that do not have the free will to go their own way. So there will be an outlet for them to be somewhere else. There has to be, because there is multiple pockets for advancement. And again, going back to my favorite pen, every geometric shape, which is really just sound, because every sound has a shape and every shape is a sound. So when sound stops, it becomes geometry, it becomes a shape. But that pen is a two-dimensional shape. But I can move it in three-dimensional directions, which means that there is a dimension above its shape in order for it to grow into. We have dimensions around us in order for us to grow into. Now, in the same way that if I go out into the sun and I, as a three-dimensional being, I cast a two-dimensional shadow, because that shadow has now lost the dimension in its projection.
Wow.
And a lot of people are seeing shadow people, including me, which are basically three-dimensional shadows. So they must be a fourth-dimensional being, because it's lost the dimension in its projection. So that shadow is two-dimensional, but it has me, which is three-dimensional. It has the space to evolve and fit into. So what we're doing by these kinds of interviews is we are creating that pocket of space for the listeners, for the viewers, to expand. Somebody has to go ahead. I mean, they're already created anyway, but somebody has to go in and refurnish the office.
This is my favourite interview ever, Michael. Thank you.
So that's what we're doing. We are basically painting and decorating the office for people to move into.
So I'm going to ask a really juvenile question here now. I always bring it, but what about the animals? What's going to happen to them?
The animals are consciousness in a different bottle.
Yeah.
And you have this thought form, you have this awareness, but it wants an awareness of all possibilities. There was a famous lecturer at New York University called Thomas Nagel, and he once said words to the effect of, you can understand every single working of the brain of a bat, but you will not know what it's like to be a bat. So in other words, you have to be it to know it. How can you be absolute, complete, fully evolved if you don't know what it's like to be an aspect of yourself? You can't. It's like having this 1,000-piece jigsaw and there's 4 or 5 pieces missing. You can never have a complete picture.
Yeah.
So you have to live each individual piece, which in holographic terms, each piece contains all the information of the whole. And we contain all the different pieces of information of the whole. And we are fragments of this holographic whole. where the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But we have it backwards, and we've made the sum of the parts greater than the whole. You know, the me, selfish, greed, this, that, and other. The parts have become greater than the whole. So we have it backwards. But
So
we are all each piece of the jigsaw.
how do you think that came about? The Gnostics will say the demiurge came in, and are you on the same page with that? You know, the demiurge has corrupted this realm to make it all about me, to basically make it a satanic realm.
Well, Satan has been misunderstood as to what it is. Satan is really the Lord of matter. So anything that deals with material is satanic. So the satanic consciousness again is that material possession. You know, I made £1 billion last week, and that's not enough. I need to make 2 next year. That falls into satanic consciousness because it deals with materialism. So you have Satan, who is the Lord of matter, and anything material falls into satanic consciousness.
And what the New Age believers, what the New Age followers don't realise is that they are that satanic worshipper, for want of a better word, because the New Age movement is very much about materialism.
Yes, which is satanic consciousness.
Absolutely.
So I know somebody once said to me at a New Age talk, and then I'll get back to point, but I was at a talk and somebody says to me at the end of it, why have you brought darkness into this place? And I said, according to, you know, some of the New Age teachings, according to religious teachings, on the 4th day, God created visible light. So how can you say that? Because in order for God to have created visible light, he, it, she had to be standing in a place of dark. So why are you telling me, in my pursuit to get back to God, that I should avoid the darkness? Because that's where God was. So you are contradicting because you don't know anything. So I'm not bringing darkness into this, I'm bringing balance into this, and I'm telling you that you need to unify both sides, both aspects of you. So yeah, anything that is materialistic is satanic.
And people misunderstand what Satanism actually is.
Yes.
They completely think it's devil worshipping.
Yeah, you know, they say that 666 is the number of the devil. No, it isn't.
Yeah.
666 means the follower of light. It's the sun.
And 666 follows me around, Michael. I lived off the A666 in Bolton. I've got 666 in my phone number, and my YouTube channel is Bite Size Gnosis 0666.
Imagine Pythagoras was seen as one of the first grandmasters of illumination. Now, Pythagoras had a secret number for the sun, which was the number 36. Now, if you add up all the numbers from 1 to 36, 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, it equals 666. So wow. 666 is the followers of light. It is the secret number of the sun. That is why you have 9 pyramids of 4 sides. 9 times 4 is 36. So it is the follower of light. It has nothing to do with Satan. It's truth groups that have been given false light that believe it to be true light.
Yeah.
And they've created all of this community around them, saying that we are the truth bearers. Follow us. They have it wrong.
Yeah. 666 is what we are. 6 neurons, 6 whatever, and there's 6 something else. I can never remember what the particles
are.
Yeah.
But we are light. We are light, aren't we? Because the soul is light.
Exactly.
And the singular point, the core mind of the universe, the singular point, is light.
Yeah.
The soul, imago Dei, made in the image of light. From dust, from light you came, to dust, to light you shall return. So 666 relates to light.
Yeah.
Which, when you look in planetary terms, the sun, light allows us to learn through seeing, and the planet Saturn relates to the ears, which is to learn through listening.
Now, I want to touch on Saturn. It's really interesting because before you even got to that, I was thinking I want to bring up the black cube and the worship of Saturn. And then you started talking about Saturn. So there was some kind of synchronistic vibration going on there. But what's your view on we live in a black cube and Saturn worship, and Saturn being the planet of Satan?
The the only comparable between Saturn and Satan, other than the similar sounding name, is that Saturn deals with the limitation of matter because its energy contracts, and Satan is the lord of matter. So they both relate to the material realm. Now, that's why police and judges wear black, because that is the colour of Saturn. So it is basically the colour of law. Now, when Saturn's energy, as I say, because it's limitation of matter, it is a contracting, limiting energy. So when in law you sign a contract, it is really to contract. It is limiting you. So it is the law. So when you look at, again, as I say, the sun, you learn through seeing. Saturn, you learn through hearing. Now, when you wear an earring, that is Saturn.
Ring of Saturn.
Because the word earring
Yeah.
comes from an obscure word, which is plough or to reap. So earring means to plough or to reap. Which
1
then
minute,
gives
I
us,
can't escape. Bear with me a sec.
okay.
Wait. Sorry, you can carry on talking. I'm listening.
So earring is reap or to plough. So that gives us the grim reaper. Saturn, Kronos, Father Time. So it is really learning through hearing, and the sun is learning through seeing. Now, novice initiates were known as the listeners, because they weren't allowed to contribute to the conversation until they were at a sufficient level of knowledge in which to speak. So they just listened and learned through listening, which is Saturn.
And again, I mean, this comes from David Icke. The Saturn of Ring is meant to be where they're recording us, but again, it coincides with what you're saying about being a planet of listening.
It is. When you look at the rings of Saturn, when I've heard some of the musical tones that have come from the rings of Saturn, and I've then listened to the tones and the pitched of tones that are coming from crop circles, they are an exact match. So it is my opinion that some of the crop circles, which is sound frozen, is actually being transmitted from the rings of Saturn.
They're sound frozen. They're sound frozen. Crop circles are sound that's frozen.
The Greeks call geometry frozen music. So when you have a shape, it is sound that is basically almost static. When you look at the beautiful geometry of a snowflake, that is the sound of the environment that has created it. So when you look at a crop circle, the intricate shapes of the crops is sound. Now, I've actually deciphered an alien message inside every crop circle, which is in what is called diatonic ratios. Now, diatonic ratios are your C, D, E, F, G, A, B notes. Now, what has happened and what I've found is that when you have a double sound wave, you can actually impregnate words and letters in between the sound waves. And those sound waves are like an envelope to a letter. They can deliver a message. Now, famous composers like Mozart and Bach used to impregnate messages within the sound waves of their symphonies. So the people who knew that were able to extract the words and the letters and make a sentence. Now, that is what
crop coding comes in. So again, it's coding, isn't it?
So between the sound waves that are frozen in order to make the shape of the crop circle, there is an extraterrestrial message, and that message basically is telling us how to rectify the soul and how to return back to the light of the universe. And because every single crop circle has the same diatonic ratios of the musical scale, it is the same message under a different pattern.
You know, Michael, out of all the YouTube personalities that there are out there, I haven't come across anybody that's talking about this stuff. This is all completely, not all of it, honestly, but what you're talking about there, you know, a lot of it is talking about Saturn being Saturn worship and time and the devil and.
Of course, because they've misunderstood it. They've misunderstood the sacred teachings, and what they're doing is they're using the crumbs of the main loaf to formulate these theories of perceptual truth, and it's not.
And how have you come across this? Is it from downloads or is it from research that you've done? Because I remember in Ant's interview you said that your book that isn't yet finished, that's due out soon, which I'll more than likely buy. It's knowledge from ancient secret societies. How have you got that information? Because it's obviously secret for a reason, because they don't want us plebs knowing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, some of them do. But
do you think they're benevolent entities?
Yeah, if you imagine that, so let's go back to medieval times. The conversation that we're now having would bring with it a death sentence for us both.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to speak about this kind of information, and I didn't want, the Vatican spies to hear what I was saying,
you'd go underground.
For one, I'd go underground, and for two, I would encrypt it in plain sight. Because I know that if I encrypt it in plain sight, like all of these pictures behind me, that on the face of it, it just looks like a religious painting. But that religious painting has encrypted many of these secret knowledges. And I know that when humanity reaches a certain level of awareness, they will begin to decipher what I've encrypted into my paintings, into my artwork, into my... Yes.
Is all about messages in. I don't understand it and I've not read it, but it is all about coding in the paintings, messages in the paintings.
So what it's doing is really, it's preserving me and it's preserving my knowledge, because I know it's almost like a time capsule where people in the future will be intelligent enough to understand it.
Sorry, tell me we've got 55 seconds left, but that must be wrong because I haven't had. So let's carry on. And if it kicks us out, we'll come back in again. If you're happy to.
Yeah, I've got as much time as we need. But so you are preserving yourself, your life, and you are preserving your knowledge. And even Christianity began as a secret society, because when something becomes too powerful, the likes of church and state, which is really the same thing, try and stop you. Now, the irony is that I talk a lot about secret societies and I expose the information that they try and keep secret. But the way in which things are at the moment, where a lot of my public events are being cancelled, it has turned me into a secret society, because I now have to go underground and to advertise the event, but not give the location of the event until the last possible moment. So here's me who talks about secret societies, and I've become one. Yeah. But as I say, even Christianity was a secret society. But there are those who want to tell you but couldn't, and there are those that don't want to tell you.
I'm reading a book at the moment called Love Does Not Condemn, and it goes right back to the very, very early Gnostics from 160 BC. But I'm at the bit where it's talking about the early church, and it's talking about how societies went underground and became secret because they were basically chastising and, like you say, killing people who wanted philosophical conversations if they were talking about anything that went against the early church. And that's how secret societies manifested, because people want to have these conversations.
Of course they do. People were told that they couldn't interpret the scripture themselves. They had to go to the bishop or the vicar or the priest. But then they were down to get the official interpretation. The church tries as much as it can to deny its pagan origins. But the word church comes from the word circle. So the first churches were the stone circles, which are pagan. Now, the modern day Christianity is really a watered down, corrupted version of Egyptian Gnosticism, which came through Hebrew and the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism. And it was created by them for a Gentile audience. So the things that we see is encrypted in the Giza Plateau of Egypt. Christ and Mary Magdalene is encrypted within the mathematics of the Great Pyramid. All of the 153s, the 153 fish that Christ caught, the Mary Magdalene, which has a numerical value of 153 in Greek. When you look at the Great Pyramid, it is on the 17th force level. If you add up the numbers 1 to 17, it equals 153. If you go into the Grand Gallery, it has 153 steps. It is 153 feet long. If you get 153, it's 1 plus 5 plus 3, which gives you 9, which is the number of completion, which is the 9 pyramids. It is a mathematical universal language that is encrypted in stone, but that became the Bible. And I once had a conversation like this, and somebody called in or wrote into the studio saying that the Bible is nothing to do with mathematics. And my answer was, well, then why is there a scripture called Numbers? And that ended the conversation, because numbers is mathematics.
Yeah.
Now, the Bible is a book of genius, but you will never understand it if you read it as a book. Again, as an example, when you look at the Torah, which is really the 5 books of Moses, which is Genesis to Deuteronomy. If I go out on any street, in any town, in any country, and pass people a Bible, I pretty much guarantee that people will open it and read it as a book from Genesis to Deuteronomy, from left to right. That's not how you do it. If you look at the Hebrew mystics and the rabbis and the Egyptians, they read and write from right to left because it is bringing you back towards your heart center.
Yeah.
Whereas reading and writing from left to right is taking you away. So with that in mind, you should read the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, from Deuteronomy to Genesis, the opposite way. Because then what you believe to be the beginning is really the end. So if you read the Bible as a book, you're never going to understand it because it's not a book.
So on that, Michael, you've just mentioned the end. I want to go in a completely different direction. Again, this is based on the YouTube personalities I used to follow. Some of them I still do, but not many. I've turned my nose away from a lot of the truth community because I realise it's just distraction. A lot of it's BS. But there is one chap that I do still follow, and he talks a lot about the apocalypse. And we're very near the end of the world and the apocalypse. What's your opinion on that, based again on your research and what you know?
First of all, I would always say belong to nothing.
Belong to nothing.
Belong to nothing. In other words, I don't belong to New Age, I don't belong to religions, I don't belong to anything. Because then I'm my own entity, and my own free will take me where I need to take me.
Yeah.
When you start looking at biblical Armageddons, when you start looking at biblical judgment days, a lot of them are a deeper meaning. So, for instance, biblical judgment day is really the end of the precession of the equinox. So it's the end of a 25,920 year cycle. That is judgment day when we look at ourselves and analyze ourselves from where we were to where we are. So that is biblical judgment day. When you start talking about the end of the world, it is talking about the change of an age. So the biblical Armageddon, the biblical end of the world, is the change of an age. And as I said on Ant's interview, we went into the age of Aquarius, according to the mystics, in 1962, our time. So we're already in the age of Aquarius. We're already in the age of change. We're already in the times, because we've gone from one age to another. And that's all the end times are. It is not the end of the world. The world will not end. That's just, again, that's just a misunderstanding of the meaning of things. The world's not going to end. You know, we need to change the world. We need to change ourselves, but it is not going to end.
I don't think they talk about it ending. I think they're just referring to cataclysms. I mean, I don't know if you've heard about the Phoenix event, which happens every 140, or however many years, 138 years. Yes. We have a Phoenix event. Again, because there's a big YouTube personality on there at the moment, and again, I did follow him before he got big because I thought it was amazing, and now I'm just like, I think he's just putting stuff into the collective consciousness so we manifest it, and I think that's what a lot of these YouTube personalities are there to do. So what is your view on the Phoenix event?
My view, when you mentioned, well, when you mentioned 138 years, see, the number 138 in mystical terms is a code that is secret information about to be presented. So in many mystical books, it will be on page 138. It may be the 138th chapter, it may be the 138th paragraph. There will be watermarks at the bottom of the page or somewhere that contains 138, which means you need to analyze this page or this line or this, because there is secret information coming. So 138 straight away tells you that there's secret information to be had. The Great Reset, we are all responsible for our own reset. We are all responsible for our own salvation. We are all responsible to get us where we need to get. Other people, groups of people can help us, but it is still ourself that gets us there. We could go and do the London Marathon and take 10 friends each, and we could have a group of 20 at the start line. But who is it that gets you across the finishing line?
Yeah.
It is you.
And
So
that is one big lesson that I've learned over these last few months, especially. We are walking this journey alone. Well, this is an individual journey, and we can have our little groups and we can have our little chats like we're having a chat now, but our journey is our own. But continue, please, Michael.
No, it is, because, you know, illumination, which is really the only one true religion, is illumination. And when you bring it back to its core essence, that's the same in every civilization of the world. That is the same as every one of the 4,200 recorded religions. Their true essence is illumination, but they've gone bad. You know, that they're teaching other things, which is taking people away from illumination. So that being the case, you know, we are responsible to illuminate ourselves. Illumination is an individual task. It is not a group process, and we have to get ourselves there. So the Great Reset is everyone that does that. Now, the Great Reset is when we resurrect and rebirth ourselves. Our first baptism is through our mother's waters when we come into this world. Our second birth is when we resurrect and rebirth ourselves, when we rebuild the temple, which is the body. And when you rebuild the temple and you resurrect yourself, which can only be a living resurrection, it can never be die and then resurrect, as the Bible tells you. You have to be alive to do it. You are rebirthing yourself to a spiritual birth, and that's you know, that's the rapture. That is the reset. It is when each and every one of us reinvents ourselves.
Through life, we are reinventing ourselves. Some of us we are reinventing ourselves through life, aren't we? Anyway, through, you know, I mean, these past 3 years, and specifically these past 6 months, I have flown through my spiritual gnosis and what I'm learning. I mean, having someone like you 6 months ago, I wouldn't have understood a single word you've just said throughout this hour and a half, 2 hours this interview we've just done. It just would have been, you know.
I came up with a phrase in my head, really, which was, the end of the caterpillar is the beginning of the butterfly.
Yeah.
So everything that you did up until now was in preparation for your rebirth.
Yeah.
And again, through that dualistic comparison, you have a gauge of where you were to where you are now. Because we should be attempting to evolve. We should be attempting, in parallel to the universe, evolution. That's what we should be doing. And
in your mind, how does that evolvement look like? And again, I hate the word evolve, because apparently we've evolved from monkeys, so it's a word that I try not to use. But how does that evolve? Okay, we can see our physically evolving now with the knowledge, with, you know, the upgrades in our life, but how does, you know, spiritually, how does that look to you? Is that not coming back into this material realm?
If you need, I mean, as I say, some people come here because they have a mission to come here back into this material realm. You know, they've already, should we say, mastered the material realm and mastered themselves, which is part of the material realm. But some people have volunteered, or some beings, some souls, some awarenesses have volunteered to come back in order to help others, you know, their fellow woman to it. And that's why I say a lot of these, you know, positive alien sightings are actually advanced humans who've been here, done it, got the t-shirt, and they've moved on. But it is within them to help. The same as, you know, the people on Earth. You know, we're doing this because invariably we want to help people. Yeah. And that's why we're doing it. So there are souls and awarenesses that have come here with a specific task to help, and that is why they have come back into a realm that they didn't need to come back to, because where the help is where you need to be. You know, when you're in the police and I'm in the police and you get the address of an incident, that's where you go to, because that's where you need it. Yeah. Now, the address of the incident is planet Earth. So people, you know, beings have come here to help. We've got 1 minute left. I do have more questions for you. I'm not quite sure
I want to carry on the conversation, but I'm fearful of, not fearful, that's the wrong word, but repeating myself and asking you the same things just so I get a better understanding of do you want to talk about the pyramid if you want to come back in? It's up to you if you want to come back
Yeah,
in.
no,
Yeah?
yeah, we'll come back in and
Yeah?
you know, put some kind of closure to it.
Yeah,
I'll see you in a moment.
Okay, bye-bye. So, folks, welcome back to this amazing conversation. So as I've just said off air to Michael, because I'm so obsessed with the soul and not wanting to come back and this whole transhuman agenda, Michael, what is your opinion and your thoughts on if we are unfortunate enough or fortunate enough, I don't know, again, your perception on that, if we are reincarnated back into this realm and it is the technological realm, we'll obviously come back as these incubator babies. That's what's being sold to us. If that is the truth, that's another question, but that's what's being sold to us. That's how they see our future. What's your opinion if we haven't evolved enough in this lifetime and we end up fucking coming back? You know that meme that you're probably seeing, that baby like, I'm back.
Yeah, the future can be changed. Now, an example of that is when government or officialdom turns around and says, you know, this is our plan, this is what we're going to do, and it doesn't happen. It's because enough people have basically changed the timeline, they've changed the future.
And I need to correct myself there because I keep saying it's all laid out, cooked and baked, and we can't change it. And I need to really stop doing that.
We can change it. If you look at, as I say, time is an invisible force that allows us to be in a specific place at a specific moment. Now, without that force, we could not have an individual existence. So we have to have time, and time is a cycle. The same as the universal pattern is a cycle. You know, we have the seasons, we have, you know, the birth and death. Everything really in nature is a cycle. But past, now, and future is really in the same place. And I've had experiences where I've gone into other time events, and I've had experiences where other things seemingly have come into my time event. So we are really parallel to each other, and we are crisscrossing each other, and things that we believe to be no longer are still happening somewhere. So it is all really relatively in the same place. If you look at it from a different perspective, you know, you have this original awareness of light, which is really your soul, which is your essence. And this soul is on a journey of discovery. It is on a journey of learning. And it comes here, and most people will have at least 108 incarnations, because that is really the magic number in relation to it. But it's very unlikely that you are going to get everything that you need to learn or everything that you want to learn, you know, in one term of a 5-year school, because, you know, you have 5 years for a reason. You have 108 cycles for a reason, because that's probably how long it's going to take you to get what you need to get. So if you look at it from a very higher perspective, because really the lower is a projection of the higher. It's the same thing on a different part of the scale. So if you look at it from a different perspective, and you are this light awareness, and you think that, well, I want to learn this, I need to do that, and I need to advance, and this is what I need to advance and to evolve. So where can I best get that education? I will go to this particular realm, I will go to this dimension, I will go to this frequency. And I will continue to go to that frequency until I've mastered it, until I understand it, until it's become the mirror that tells me what I am. And then I will move on and do it somewhere else until eventually I will make it through all the levels back to the absolute.
So just so I understand what you're saying here, the 108 lives, for want of a better word, can happen in any different dimension, in any dimension. It doesn't necessarily have to be this earth dimension. No. Really, just because I've got a friend who thinks the same, but
it doesn't. You basically, if you imagine that it's really about compatible frequencies. And if you are a very third dimensional earthly person who are happy in a third dimension earth, and you do nothing to utilize the lessons that can give you, then the chances are, if you do come back, you are coming back to the same vibration, to the same place. If you use use the lessons that it gives you in order, you know, the resistance that it gives you to grow. If I go to a gym and I want to build my muscles up, then I use resistance. That resistance are the weights that I use to build my muscle. In the same way that spirit grows through the resistance of matter.
Yeah.
So if you are no longer compatible with the third dimensional laws of mathematics, or which is really a third dimensional frequency, then the chances are your next incarnation will be somewhere else, until again, you know, you become incompatible with that, and then it may be somewhere else again. It's not to say that everybody has 108 lives. Some people don't, some people have more, but that is really a magic figure that is again accepted in deep circles, because it relates to the pentagram, which again is another sacred shape, which relates to the moon. The moon, you know, rejects a lot of earth souls because they are too primitive and violent. So
the moon.
Yeah, the moon is not, should we say, let's say for now that the moon is not a planet. It is not an earth.
See, now you're talking about a subject that I enjoy talking about. I don't know. I have my own opinions on the moon, and I think it's harboring artificial intelligence, which is controlling this realm.
I have seen pulsating grids coming from the moon down to Earth.
Sorry?
I've seen pulsating grids coming from the moon.
Tell you something that I witnessed the other night. The moon was coming up over the hills. It was massive and it was really bright, because I've got hills out my window, and I could see these lights flashing on it. And then I saw a strip of red going around the outer, and it was only momentary. And of course, there are going to be loads of people that just think I'm batshit for saying that, but that's what I saw. I saw it.
Yeah, you did.
And I was like that. I was looking really, and I was like, I see things that definitely saw.
I've seen funnel-shaped pulsating grids coming from the bottom of the moon to Earth. What I can say is the moon is an advanced soul pool, and it has a civilization within it. And it is my view that a lot of the things that we look at as being the shapes of craters are the skeleton remnants of former continents. So the moon was made to look like a satellite and made to look like the planet, but it is not. And the Egyptians tell you this in their hieroglyphs and different things, and certain mystical writings tell you this. So the moon is not a planet, but it had to look like one. So we sometimes we will say, you know, the soul, when it goes back and it reviews itself and it reviews what lessons it had and what lessons it didn't have, it will review from a higher perspective where it needs to go from there. So sometimes from a physical third dimension, I'm not coming back here. Yes, but from a higher perspective, when you're not in this low physical, you might have a different view based on what you need in order to advance.
That's quite a lot to take in, because in this physical realm, like, I'm not coming back. I don't want to come back as a robot, but you know,
yeah. Well, but again, the things that happen because largely we allow them to happen.
I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
Now, my view is, instead of trying to rush off Earth to get to these dimensions that we're already in anyway, instead of trying to rush off and leave this place, let's change this place so we don't want to leave. And that really,
Michael. Yeah,
is a greater objective, a greater task, to enjoy ourselves, to advance ourselves, and to live on don't want to leave.
And in actual fact, by those of us that are saying, I don't want to come back, blah blah, we're actually living in a place of fear, because we're fearing what the elites want to bring in, the AI technology, etc., etc. You know, and the whole lessons to be learned is and controlling our own mind is to not live in fear, because they want us living in fear.
Again, going back to the ancient Hebrew, the word fear means to know. So if you know, there's no need for fear, because you understand what's going on. And that is when you separate from the illusion of a reality that's given to you. And you may turn around and say, well, I don't want to go back there. Well, let's change there. So we want to come back, but we want to stay. because that really is the task. There's nothing wrong with Earth as a beautiful planet.
Yeah.
The problem with Earth is that we've allowed morons and idiots to run it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the problem with Earth, you know, who want to shrink and oppress and stop humanity from knowing anything, rather than allowing humanity to grow, allowing humanity to become godlike.
Yeah.
You know, and if we had such a system, then why would you want to leave? Why would you not want to come back? So the task is really to change it, so we don't want to leave, not be in a rush to get off.
Do you think there are some souls that have come back that haven't lived? Okay, and again, I think I know what you're going to say here. Actually, Dolores Cannon. I don't know if you've ever looked at any of her work. I haven't looked an awful lot because I think she's a bit new age for my liking. But she has this this idea of, and it's based on the people that she's done hypnosis with, the 3 waves of souls, which is who are coming down here to rescue the rest of the souls on this planet. But going off what you've just said there, why do we need rescuing if we are here to make it a better place?
Exactly. When you look at the way in which she got the information through hypnosis, the hypnosis basically means accessing the inner mind. But as we've already discussed, that inner mind is a universal consciousness. So whose mind are you actually accessing in order to get that information? Are you not accessing the dream state of the cosmic core? Because in order to have 100% certainty of the information taken from that means, you have to understand the means. And you are looking into the inner mind of the individual, but the individual is only a pocket of the absolute. So whose mind, whose experience are you actually accessing?
So on that, and again, I know when we're going to say we're going to come in, we're going to talk about the pyramid. But on that, when I had my mushroom ceremony, I was going through journeys, and they were my personal journeys because my mum came in, my cats came in who've passed away, others came in. I actually visited places that I visited in dreams. I got stoned in my 20s and I was listening to Jim Morrison break on through, and I broke on through to the side. I visited that place again in my trip. So I know that was an individual journey, but talking about the collective consciousness, and I know there were pockets of people that came in, but when you do something like that and you see it as something being very individual, I don't know where I'm going with this. Are we accessing the collective mind as well, or is it our mind? So Dolores Cannon, when she's doing hypnosis, how do we know that she's connecting with that individual mind and not the collective? Whereas when I did my mushroom, how do I know I'm not traveling through the collective and it's my individual mind?
Because your individual mind is really memory, and the memory of a nation is history. So when you're going to these pockets of space in between space, you are accessing the places where these conscious thoughts exist. Now, when you transform from one thing to another, there will always be remnants of what once was, and those remnants of what once was still have a memory, and it is that memory that is being accessed, because it is that memory that relates to that individual experience.
One of the most beautiful bits in that was one of my cats went missing. I just want to talk to you about this because my cat actually visited me and I didn't know this. I don't remember having this dream. And when I was having my ceremony, I said, I've been here before. Jake brought me here the night he went missing. How beautiful is that? So if anybody's watching this that doesn't believe in life beyond the physical, that is absolute proof. And I bring that up because it is proof. There was an animal that I lost to. I have no memory of this physical dream, but I had memory in my trip of going to that place when Jake went missing and he passed away. And in his spirit, he took me to show me he was safe. So I know that was slightly off subject and you know.
Well, it's not, because again, you know, animals, they also go, you know, there's many loved ones who passed who I speak to who have former animals of mine with them. I have seen animals in different guises in spirit. I've seen them as apparitions, and I've seen them as orbs of light.
Yeah.
So that orb of light is a soul.
Yeah.
But they too go to this place between worlds, this space between worlds. But there are, again, going back to frequency and vibration, there are different pockets within pockets. So, you know, you in the same as on Earth, you know, there are humans who are of a very high awareness, there are humans of a very low awareness, but we're in the same place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we go to these places in between places, you get the same. You know, Aunt Betty, that has never done anything with her life, who's always just watched the BBC News and has never done anything to advance herself, she's still in the same place between worlds. But someone who's spent all of their life evolving themselves to the maximum they can be, they may well be in that space, but they're in a different frequency of that space. But they can pop in and out, or at least the higher ones can pop into the lower ones. And again, I've had too many personal experiences for that not to be the case.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I talk about something, it is because I've experienced it.
Yeah.
That has always been my threshold. And if I go and speak at a UFO conference, I am often the only person speaking who's actually ever seen a UFO.
Yeah.
But unless I had, I wouldn't be on that stage speaking about it. I have to have experienced it myself.
Of course.
And that is probably why I've seen so many of them.
I was going to read after this interview or write some of my book, but I think I'm just going to go and lie down, actually. Like I'm just gonna... but do you want to touch on the pyramid? Again, I have my own. I haven't done masses of research on the pyramid. My understanding of the pyramid is what generates this simulation. And I want to ask you about as well, again, from another YouTube personality, the 144,000 who are the souls that will be left here. And again, this is why I wanted to ask you about it, because it goes against everything that we've just been talking about, because apparently there are 144,000 stairs, or 144,000, again, I can't remember, up to the pyramid. So again, you give me your thoughts on the purpose of the pyramid, why it was built.
First of all, there were 144,000 casing stones of the pyramid. Now, 144 has a harmonic, which is on 144,000 really has a harmonic, which is 144. Now, 144 relates to light. So the biblical 144,000, when you talk about 6 days of creation, 6 times 24, 6 days is 144. So the 6 days of creation are the harmonic of 144,000. So it's not 144,000 that are left behind or go to heaven to be with Christ. It is a harmonic of light. And that is why the pyramid had 144 lime casing stones, because it was, when the sun shone on it, it was a beam of light. The pyramids have many different reasons for being there. On the one hand, they are antennas, because they are transmitting and receiving messages from the stars. On the other hand, they're all in parallel with all of the monuments and monoliths of the world. They are a gigantic star map, which is this star map that is pointing towards our origins, or certainly the star visitors that are intrinsically linked with the Earth. So if you
sorry to interrupt, and I have to, otherwise I'll forget the question, but it's just in line with what you just said with the pyramids and the stars. Do you think as above, so below, the astrological chart? So I recently was introduced to a guy who basically, the UK is a very special place as regards to the astrological map, and the UK mirrors the astrological map, and we've got a spine called the Spine of Albion, which goes up the centre of the UK. But the pyramids were built in Egypt, So there's an inconsistency there for me.
Now, Albion is a term for enlightened man as well. So when you look at the UK, it is the true Holy Lands. Palestine is in Scotland. You know, Jerusalem means to point the way to completion. The biblical David is the human hand. So you have David and Jerusalem. You have the Star of David that fits in the hand. When you have the Ten Commandments, you have the output of energy and you have the input of energy. Now, when you unify them, it becomes the tree of life of the Kabbalah.
Wow.
From earth to ether. The two thumbs are ether, the two fingers are earth. So you make the transition through the Ten Commandments from earth to ether. You are unifying the Ten Commandments, the two energy influxes in and out. And you unify when that happens. That is the Seraphot, the tree of life of the Kabbalah. David, Jerusalem. Okay, so the main UK is the main Holy Lands. Now, the pyramid, we think that there are 3 stars in Orion's belt. There's actually 4. But we can only see 3. So the heavens and the stars are mirrored on the earth. Now, if you just using the Giza planet,
heavens and the stars are mirrored on the earth. Yeah, I've got that. Yeah.
Okay. So when you start looking at the watchers, you know, when we start talking about the watchers is really a code for the stars because they look down and they watch. Now, when you look at the word bishop, it comes from the same family of words as watchers. So the watchers on earth are the bishops. So we have an astronomical, but when we have stone circles, a lot of them are meteorites. So there's a connection between earth and heaven because it is a fallen star. You know, the angels and demons are really talking about the stars. So if you just take it as being 3 stars of Orion's belt, you follow the 3 main pyramids of Giza and you look to where they are pointing, which is to Orion's belt. You then look at where Orion's belt is pointing, which is towards Taurus. Now, the symbol of Taurus is the Hindu Om symbol. So the Hindu Om symbol is really Taurus, the same as the Tor of Glastonbury. Tor in Arabic is bull. So we go from Orion's belt through the neck of Taurus, neck, Anak, and Unaki, and we go towards the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. Now, when we get to the 7 sisters of the Pleiades, or the 7 candles of the menorah of Judaism, or the 7 doves that are at the start of Roslin Chapel, which is the 7 sisters of the Pleiades, we get to what is known as a solar trinity, which is a set of 3 sun-like stars. So our sun is the 4th sun. Now, when you get this solar trinity, you have Sol 1, Sol 2, and Sol 3. Sol 1 is the blazing star of Masonry. It is the star of Christ. It is the Ra star. It is the star of Bethlehem. Now, when you get that and you put it over the Cydonian city on planet Mars, where the face on Mars is where Sol 1 is. And what that is telling us is that there is a race of our likeness in this star system. That is what the face on Mars is telling us. It is a race of our likeness. So, this solar trinity, which is mapped out in the Vatican plan, the floor plan of the Vatican, the land of the Vatican, it is marked by 3 obelisks, which is marking out this solar trinity, which is star visitation and star visitors. So the obelisk and the Christmas tree is really this star emanating its light. That's where the Christmas tree comes from, with the star on the top of it. It is the Ra star, it is the Christ star, it is the star of Bethlehem. And it is this mysterious sun-like star system from which visitors came, from which humanity most likely came. So it is all measured out in caves and monuments and monoliths and all of these different things. Now, the pyramid, if you notice that the fabric of matter is cubic, again, going back to the black cube that you mentioned, you know, the fabric of matter is the cube. Now, if you take the top 4 corners off a cube, you get the tetrahedron, which is the pyramid. Now, the base of the pyramid is cubic. Now, when you start getting divinity manifesting to the 3rd dimension, it manifests as the triangle. So the pyramid represents divinity within matter. Those who have found their own divinity, who have connected to their own divine, are the pyramid. So it is really divinity manifested on earth as it is in heaven. There's also, when you go, for argument's sake now, if I was to go to the Great Pyramid and I was to walk to the top of it, facing south, there is a particular stone that when you say the correct word at the correct time, at the correct frequency, which is in alignment with the frequency of your third eye, there is a stone that opens exactly 7 feet. Now,
Is that the Ark of the Covenant? Is that the Ark? No.
The Ark of the Covenant is illuminated man where divinity resides. So anybody who's enlightened or illumined is the Ark of the Covenant. We are the walking Arks of the Covenant. But when you walk into this stone that slides open 7 feet, you can literally walk 980 feet down. Now, just to give you some comparable, that is almost the height of the Eiffel Tower, but downwards. Now, when you go down these stairs, there are multiple rooms that you can't see because they are covered by stones. Now, when they've done radar and they've seen all of these cavities, when they go to approach these cavities, they are locked. They are rooms. And again, if you say the correct word at the correct time, at the correct frequency, the doors slide open. And when you go into these individual rooms, it not only contains messages from the stars, but it also contains the complete history of humankind.
Is this story told in what's that film with Harrison Ford?
Oh, Indiana Jones.
Yeah. As you're saying this, you reminded me of Indiana Jones and all these portals, these doors opening. That
To be honest, a lot of these movies of that type are based upon fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even though it comes across as a film, and a fiction, it is based on fact.
Absolutely.
Back to the Future.
Yeah.
Back to the Future, time travel, 88 miles an hour. It's all based on fact.
Yeah.
So when you go into these rooms, as I say, that there's technologies that is not ours. There's metals that are not from Earth. There are writings that are not from Earth. But when you decipher them, they talk about the 7 entrance points of our planet. And so when people say to me, well, why do the army, go to Antarctica and guard it? Because that is just one of the exit points and entrance points into Earth.
Sorry, Michael, but another sync there. As you were talking, I was like, I want to ask him about Antarctica. And there you mentioned the word Antarctica.
Yeah. And that's mentioned as one of the 7 entrance points and exit points into planet Earth. So that is mentioned within the Great Pyramid. And it also mentions a specific year of our time, which is 2001 AD, where ancient knowledge was time capsuled to start leaking back into the world. So we are the generation that has been entrusted to take over the baton.
And do you think that they're trying to stop that information leaking into the world? That's why you've got things like CERN, as an example, trying to change.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. There was, I think it was the 26th of August this year. There were many beings of high vibration doing work in what is known as Pyramid 2 and 3, which is the 2 next to the Great Pyramid, specifically Pyramid 2. Now, the Egyptian government could sense an influx of energy. They didn't know what was happening, but they could sense something was happening because they could feel something brewing. So on the 26th of August, they miraculously, coincidentally, decided to close the pyramid because they knew something was happening. But the beings that were doing it had already done the work before they closed the pyramid. So there's so many different reasons for the pyramid. I've dated the Great Pyramid at being, as of today, 73,440 years of age. So the Great Pyramid is the conductor of this gigantic crystalline orchestra. So there are so many reasons for it being here, but in essence, it's divinity, it's an antenna, it is a storage center, it is an initiation center, it is a portal. If you go in the likes of the sarcophagus, at 10 cycles per second of sound, it induces the soul out of the body. that soul then comes out of the body, it goes up the pyramid shafts, which act like the barrel of a gun, and your soul becomes the bullet, and it catapults you to certain star systems. So they are inducing their light, because light can go into the dimensionless and the dimensional universes. And they are traveling to these places, and they are coming back with information, which is what I'm doing when I have my modern day time slips.
So and again, it is kind of in line with the pyramid based on what I've learned. The pyramid is placed where it's placed because when we have a pole shift, the pyramid will stay, is basically the center of the earth when there's a pole shift. Is that correct information?
Well,
and do you believe in the pole shift even, and what are your thoughts on the earth being flat?
The earth's not flat. I've looked down upon the earth and it's not flat.
Oh, you've gone, Michael.
Am I still here?
You're still there. They're telling us that
enough's
enough now. They're telling us enough is enough.
No, but okay. So the Great Pyramid then is the exact center of all land mass of Earth. Now, when you look at the monad, which is a circle with a dot, that is telling you that all universal forces converge at the center of the planet. If I get a stone and I go to a river and I drop the stone, it will stop at the bottom of the river, because that is a place of equilibrium, balance, stability. Now, the center of a planet, which therefore has to be a sphere, is the seabed to the rock. So all of these universal energies are converted in the center of the sphere, which to them is their place of equilibrium. So on the basis of that universal law, Earth cannot be flat. And as I say, I have looked down at Earth and it is a sphere. Based on visual and based on universal law, it has to be a sphere. So the Great Pyramid would be where all of the universal energies converge at their place of stability, which is the center, which is your circle with the dot in the middle. The dot in the middle is the place of equilibrium.
Yeah. I'm glad you've cleared. I mean, I've been backwards and forwards about the Earth being flat. When I first heard about it, I laughed it out of the water, and then I was like, and I watched a really good documentary, and I was like, maybe it is. But then I'm like, you know, because it goes back to the being really solid evidence for pretty much everything in this realm, isn't there? There really is. Any argument that's put forward, there's really solid evidence to support that argument. And this is where it becomes really confusing when you follow it and when you're trying to get the truth.
The thing is, with the pyramid being in the exact center of landmass, what she's saying is that all the energies are converging through it. So when you look at the Great Pyramid as being the place where the two worlds meet, again, going to the chevron at the entrance, because it is saying, I am in the middle, I am the monad, all these energies are converging through me. So therefore, I am the place where the two worlds meet.
And is that the pyramid's Mount Meru, isn't it?
Pyramid's what, sorry?
Is it Mount Meru? The pyramid's Mount Meru. Is another name for the pyramid Mount Meru? Or have I got completely wrong?
I've never heard that, so I don't know. Okay. Again, there's lots of names for the pyramid. But it's basically saying, I am the center of the converging energy from all directions of the universe, and I am where the two worlds meet. Well, in order to do that, it had to be the exact center.
Absolutely. There's no mistake where these historical, for want of a better word, buildings have been positioned.
It is, and again, we changed. You know, the Greenwich. You know, we changed the Greenwich Mean Time as being basically the 0 point, the meridian. But Greenwich Mean Time is abbreviated as GMT, which is also the abbreviation for geometry. So we actually changed the line. We actually changed the original prime meridian, which was the Great Pyramid. The Great Pyramid was the original prime meridian. We changed it to Greenwich. And that's how I do it. Because when you start looking in terms of, you know, the magicians of the Vatican changed our calendar so that we would be misaligned from various star energies.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the names of our months, they don't correlate to their numbers. You know, September 7 is not the 7th month. December is not the, you know, is the 12th month. It shouldn't be, because Dec is 10. October is 8. So, you know, we have all of these misalignments, you know, calendar, which is deliberate, because we're then being misaligned from various star energies.
Yeah.
So everything has really been changed to throw us off the trail.
Yeah. To keep us here. Why did I can't keep you much longer. There's 3 minutes left.
Okay.
But with all this misalignment and trickery and inversion, why? Why is this realm being designed like that? They clearly want to keep us here, but
Of course it is.
why?
If you are a king, what good are you if you have no kingdom?
Mm.
If you are a bully in the school playground, of what purpose do you serve if there's no victims? So you create victims.
So who's keeping us here?
There's planetary and off-planetary entities that are manipulating the planet and its people as it is.
Yeah.
If you look at everything on Earth, it is, all these systems are anti-human systems.
Yeah.
Now, people turn around and say, well, you know, what sense does it make that governments are doing this, because they too live on the planet? But when you look at it in terms of it's also off planets that's doing it, it matters not to them, because they're off planet.
Yeah.
But they are using the minions on planet as a means to access our so-called physical world. So if you imagine, you know, they are the puppets, and this is the puppeteer's hand, and it fits into the glove, and they are the earthbound minions that are being acting for the off-planet entities that are controlling things. And that is why they have to create victims. They have to create everybody to be in a certain vibration, which is the vibration of the timeline that they control. And the more people that start to raise their vibration, we start jumping off the sinking ship.
So where are
the
benevolent ones coming in to not rescue us, because we don't need rescuing, but where, you know, if we've got these malevolent, and we've got literally 1 minute left, but if we've got these malevolent entities, where are the benevolent ones that are fighting for our purpose?
Everywhere. In famous figures of the past, such as Nikola Tesla, he was a star visitor. He came to Earth to teach us about free energy. But we basically ignored Tesla, and we let ourselves be manipulated, and we now pay for it.
Yeah.
There's people throughout history that have come here, that have come from the stars to help us. There's people on the planet now, you know, like us, who are trying to say, this is an illusion, escape the illusion, and you will go to a better place.
Yeah.
There's people that are removing the limitations in energy fields. There's so much help that we have that things will ultimately change. But what we're doing now, we are seeing the last gasp clutches of desperation clinging onto a system that they created.
We have 39 seconds left. Michael, thank you so much. I'm going to let you go in because I need to go and lie down. But absolutely amazing interview. And every question I've thrown at you from other researchers, you've had an answer. So I'm going to buy your book when it comes out. And I think I might buy one of your others as well. Send me a link to them. And 19 seconds left. I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you so much. And you've been my favourite guest so far. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thank you. And re-question.
I will. I think I might invite you back on again when I have some more upgraded questions for